to an adverse outcome, they would be the insurance. And when you're looking at these trials, you have to look and make sure, because some of the smaller companies don't do that, and you just can't assume the risk because you don't know what's going to happen. But the larger companies, usually that's a standard thing. They basically say, we'll insure if there's any problem. You have to realize these trials are when you go through the first 3 phases, it can cost $1 billion to $5 billion before a drug's approved. And I've seen some, the phase 3 study probably cost them $3 billion to get to that point. They decided this drug isn't any better than what's out there, and they just stopped developing it. So, I like to think of it like hit records. There's one hit wonders, and but there's a lot of groups out there that cut a record, and you never heard of them ever because they didn't sell, and the record company spent money, and oh well, didn't work out.
Yeah, and what I would say, if they don't, if the company does not indemnify if there's a problem, then the other thing is for you to make sure that you have good health insurance that would cover if there was a problem, because I think it can be quite variable. You want to know what the coverage looks like.
So in talking about trials, we've heard a lot in the news about funding and things like that. Do you think we will be able to continue with clinical trials, moving forward? And if not, what does that mean for those of us with lupus?
I think there's a lot of questions there. I will say right now, there's certain aspects of drug development that are extremely competitive. And one of them, for instance, is CAR T cells or bispecifics. And these are really costly therapies that potentially can do a lot, but not everyone's going to get too far enough along. These are difficult trials to do. And so there'll be some attrition of companies, I believe, in that space. But in terms of pharmaceutical companies, I think so far have been willing to proceed, and there seem to be a lot of lupus trials. I think where there's been more question has been more on the NIH side and other funders. And I think we've heard some good news today that, because we do need really all elements working in concert to be able to develop new things that can be handed off to drug companies. So I think there's still a lot to work out in the government participation and all of that. But I don't see industry pulling back at this point yet.
Well, that's good. So, Nikki, what prompted you to get involved in clinical trials? And then how did you go about finding these trials?
I think I just started receiving a lot of information. We might have some paperwork outside, but Ray, I always forget what it stands for.
I'll talk about it.
Yeah, okay. So if you sign up for Ray, and give your information in terms of when you got diagnosed, what medications you're on, your symptoms, they can also send you trials. So I believe that's how I started receiving initially. And then there's some influencers on Instagram that tend to talk about clinical trials and send it out. They might get a little compensation if you go through their link. And then once you kind of see what their sites they're using, like the Insiders is one, and I forget another platform. But once you sign up for it and say that you have lupus, they will email you every time they think you might be eligible for a trial. Then you fill out the questions, and then you go from there. So it's been a lot of clinical trials, I would say, in the last 2 or 3 years. So not all medication based.
So in talking about clinical trials, how does someone vet whether or not this is